It is the one, the only Shayne Stanfield. It's time for a little sipping on this Monday, sipping on scripture, that is. Good morning, Shayne.
Morning, guys. Thanks for having me. Today
Yes,
we're
sir.
sipping on scripture for the readings Monday, the 33rd week in Ordinary Time, also the memorial of St. Elizabeth of Hungary. Your faith has saved you. We can read about several occasions that are recorded in the Gospels where Jesus generally performed miraculous healings for countless numbers of individuals. For instance, the 4th chapter of Matthew states that Jesus went all around Galilee and that he cured every disease and illness among the people. We also read that Jesus did the same in Gennesaret, but it was there and in other places that it was mentioned that people were also bringing the sick to him, or that large crowds from other regions traveled to him to be healed of other diseases. And yet there are approximately 15 distinct accounts in the Gospels where we read about Jesus performing miraculous healings of various physical ailments in a more detailed and personal manner. These healings were obviously detailed and shared with us for various reasons, but I'd like to highlight one reason in particular regarding the faith of the individual being healed for the purpose of this reflection. I think there are 3 of these healings that are worth noting where Jesus responds to the reaction of the person being healed by saying something along the lines of, "Your faith has saved you." I'll start with a gospel reading from last Wednesday, when we read about Jesus encountering the 10 lepers as he was entering a village. They stood at a distance from Jesus, and they were required to do, and they said with a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." And when Jesus saw them, he said, "Go show yourselves to the priests." As they were going, they were all cleansed, but only one of them, realizing that he had been healed, returned to Jesus, glorifying God in a loud voice. This was a Samaritan, and he fell at the feet of Jesus and thanked him, which caused Jesus to question, "Has none but this foreigner returned to give thanks to God?" Before Jesus then said, "Stand up and go. Your faith has saved you." Here it's pretty clear that Jesus was recognizing that it was only the Samaritan that had a faith that saves. Not only to see Jesus as God, but to appreciate and express gratitude for his merciful love. Sure, the other 9 Jewish lepers had some sort of faith that Jesus could heal them, but that faith was pretty much limited to what they likely heard about regarding his success as some sort of a miracle worker. Now, the next healing is the woman who had been suffering miserably from hemorrhages for 12 years. And when she heard about Jesus, when she had the opportunity, she approached him and from behind and simply touched his cloak. She then thought to herself, as if it was a prayer, "If I but touched his clothes, I shall be cured." And immediately her flow of blood dried up, and she felt it in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Jesus was immediately aware that power had gone out from himself, and he turned around to the crowd and asked who had touched his clothes. His disciples thought this was strange for Jesus to say because the crowd had been physically pressing against him, but nevertheless Jesus began to look for this person. We read that the woman then approached in fear and trembling and fell down before Jesus to explain what she had did. And Jesus responded by saying, "Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be cured of your affliction." It seems pretty clear in this case that Jesus recognized that this woman had a faith that saves by the way she approached him, physically demonstrating a fear of God, but perhaps even more so with her boldness of trust in God's mercy and in obtaining God's healing by touching just the clothing of Jesus, which she would have been forbidden to do because of her disease according to Jewish law. Finally, I think I've saved the best example of these healings for last, and we can read about it in today's gospel, which comes to us from the 18th chapter of Luke. But I like Mark's version a little better because of some extra details that are important. This story of the healing of the blind beggar, known as Bartimaeus, thanks to Mark, who had inquired about some commotion as he was begging along a road outside of Jericho, and he was told that Jesus of Nazareth was passing by. Immediately he publicly proclaimed Jesus as Messiah, as he shouted, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." But the crowd rebuked him and told him to be silent, but he was persistent, and he called out all the more, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." We read that Jesus then stopped and said, "Call him." So they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take courage, get up, he's calling you." Another important detail that Mark shares is that Bartimaeus threw aside his cloak, sprang up, and came to Jesus, who said, "What do you want me to do for you?" Bartimaeus replied to him, "Master, I want to see." So then Jesus tells him, "Go your way, your faith has saved you." And we then read that he immediately received his sight and followed him on his way. Yes, It's fairly obvious that Jesus recognized that Bartimaeus had a faith that saves because he persistently proclaimed within the crowd that Jesus was the Messiah, even after getting rebuked for doing so. But the point that I've been so eager to make is that detail about the cloak. Bartimaeus was a blind beggar whose life would have depended on that cloak to collect what little people would give him in order to survive. Bartimaeus had such a faith in Jesus as being the Messiah that he was certain that he would not only be physically healed with the gift of physical sight, but that he would be also be spiritually fulfilled with the gift of supernatural sight. So Bartimaeus, throwing away of his cloak while he was still blind, was the complete surrender to Jesus of his livelihood and the life that he knew. The throwing away of the cloak was also a bold act of total dependence on Jesus for all that Bartimaeus would need for a new life going forward, not to mention his willing acceptance of that. We know this because of another detail. Remember that Jesus told Bartimaeus, "Go your way," before he told him, "Your faith has saved you." And what did we read after he received his sight? Bartimaeus listened and obeyed. He knew that his way was now the way of Jesus, which is why we read that Bartimaeus then followed Jesus. We are all in need of some sort of healing, but I hope that it is clear by now that it's the manner in which we seek that healing that really counts. Is your faith saving you?
Love
Good
it.
stuff. Wow. Thank you, Shayne
Good
Stanfield.
stuff. Thank you, Mr. Shayne.
Thank you.